Breaking news. Considered. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Robin Flynn filling in for Elias Macko. So when someone suffers a cardiac arrest, every single second counts. The difference between life and death can often come down to whether a defibrillator is nearby and someone actually knows how to use it. Yet, despite growing awareness about the importance of these devices, health advocates and a Quebec coroner are urging Quebec to speed up the installation of automated external defibrillators, also known as AEDs, in public places. They argue that wider access could save countless lives by allowing bystanders to actually intervene before first responders arrive, which dramatically increases a person's chances of survival. We're joined now by Dr. François de Champlain. He's an emergency physician at the McGill University Health Center and president of the Jacques de Champlain Foundation. Hi, Dr. de Champlain. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning to you and your listeners.
So defibrillators being available in public spaces seems like a relatively modern adaptation. In years prior, what we always see in TV and movies is, people doing CPR. People get trained in doing CPR. How much better is it to have a defibrillator as opposed to just somebody who's trained in CPR?
Yeah, it's a great question that we get asked very often. CPR is great. Don't get me wrong. It actually oxygenates the, vital organs, including the brain, which after 5 minutes of when the heart stops, the brain will start to suffer. So even if the person is brought back, likely the quality of life won't be as good as if you do CPR. So CPR is a vital thing to do. And actually, even if someone is not trained to do it, never took a first aid course, they will be coached to how to do it by the 911 operator. So never hesitate. It's chest compression CPR. But the AED is really, or the defibrillator is really what's going to bring back that person to life. What happens is, either it's a primary electricity problem that causes what we call an arrhythmia and makes the heart stop, or that it's a blocked coronary or artery of the heart. The result is that there is electric dysregulation. And what really the defibrillator does is it jump starts really the heart back to a normal rhythm so it can do what it's meant to be done, which is pumping the blood forward. And so the defibrillator is the life-saving tool. And essentially what you're doing with performing CPR is, buying some time until the defibrillator comes in, but it's really the defibrillator that will bring back that person to life.
How difficult is it to use a defibrillator? I think people, when they think of defibrillators, they think again of what you see in the movies and stuff, the big paddles, and you rub them together, you yell clear, and everybody, But in reality, the ones that are on the ground in most places, they're like little diodes or stickers that you stick on people's chests, right?
Yeah, exactly. Most of the movies, especially the older movies, are showing a screen where you see a rhythm and all that. It looks like very complicated, many buttons. But in real life, the AED, the A stands for automatic. So the machine does most of the job. There's usually 2 buttons on those machines. One is on-off. And then there's both visual prompts and audio prompt that will guide you step by step through what's being done. And there's actually been studies showing that 6th graders can do this almost as quickly using a defibrillator without prior training, with no prior course, almost as quickly as trained paramedics using it, just following the voice prompt. So we use on a daily basis things that are way more complicated, like our phone that has frequent updates, and then we need to figure things out. This is really so simple, but people think it's so complicated that that's the main barrier to it being used. So one of the best thing about those courses is it teaches you how simple it is, but even without a prior course, one should never, ever hesitate to use one.
Wow. Okay. In conversation with Dr. François de Champlain, ER physician at the MUHC, we're talking about defibrillators and how we need more of them in public places. Is AED training part of the standard first aid education that people receive? Because in most workplaces, there's usually at least a few people who are first aid certified, right?
True. Most of the big workplace have one identified person that will respond to, emergency waiting for the first responder or the paramedics. In Quebec, many schools in the third year of secondary school or high school will offer some training. It's not mandatory yet for all the schools to have such things, but it is the Ministry of Education work plan to make it mandatory. So eventually we'll have like a new generation of people that were trained or are trained in school. There's many countries and jurisdictions which also makes it mandatory to obtain the driver's license. So if you're exposed to it, like, once or twice in your life, what you will remember is how easy it is and never to hesitate to intervene. Again, the AED will tell you what to do and will decide if a shock is required and will just ask you to press on the shock button. So it's never you that decides that someone needs a shock. It's the machine really that will decide it. So it's impossible to do wrong.
It sounds like there are only benefits to having more AEDs available in public spaces. So what is the biggest hurdle here? Is it just people are afraid to install them because they're worried they'll use it incorrectly? Or is this a cost issue? What's the problem here?
Well, really, the cost has gone down. I remember not that long ago, about 10 years ago, we were talking about $3,000 per AED, which is not that big in my opinion. But now that the price is more like $1,200, $1,500 for an AED. And again, the maintenance cost, the change of pads and batteries is usually up to 5 years. So there's actually no cost to it or maintenance issue. Depending of the model, for 2 to 5 years. And the machine does a self-test. So if it's not beeping, but flashing green, meaning it's ready to go. So someone at their workplace in front of it, if it's flashing green, it's ready to go. It's easy. There's no maintenance, no cost. So to answer your question, I think the fear, even for the government, to pass legislation on this, because this is really what we are looking for and what the coroner report of Mrs. Godin is saying in her coroner report, is really that they should pass legislation such as Manitoba, Ontario, and many other countries around the world. I think the fear is that it puts, again, this constraint on small businesses, some of them operating with a small margin of profit. But really, we've done this for fire extinguisher. We see them on every level of buildings. And again, they almost never get used. They're part of the code of construct, for Code de Bâtiment. And we see this as the same. When you see a fire extinguisher on the wall, you probably should see an AED next to it.
Yep, that's a really, really great idea, and I don't see any downsides to this. Dr. François de Champlain, emergency physician at the MUHC, president of the Jacques de Champlain Foundation. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and people can download the free app on their phone, AED Quebec, simply to locate the nearest AED. Thank you.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that existed. The AED Quebec app, so it tells you where the closest AED is to you. That's some really great tip there. Still to come, we're going to talk about the Quebec government's action plan for caregivers and what this actually means for working caregivers. That's coming up.
Pride is like love. You feel it in your heart. iHeartRadio, Canada's #1 streaming app for radio and podcasts, including iHeart Pride Canada, your favorite hits, and must-have party bangers, plus personalized and curated playlists like Back in the Day Pride.
Come together, celebrate love.
Take Pride with you, anytime, anywhere. Just ask your smart speaker to play iHeart Pride Canada. Stream us on your phone or listen now at iHeartRadio.ca.
Debate, interviews, and breaking news. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Robin Flynn filling in for Elias Mackos today and tomorrow with you until 12 p.m. Millions of Quebecers are providing care for a loved one right now. Whether it's an aging parent, a spouse, a child with special needs, maybe a family member who lives with a disability. And this work is often unpaid. It's exhausting. Usually you're trying to do it while also raising your own children. Maybe you've got a full-time job. It's essential to keeping the healthcare system functioning, as we learned during the pandemic. when all of these caregivers were unable to get into CHSLDs to take care of their loved ones. Well, last week, the Quebec government unveiled its new action plan for caregivers, outlining a series of measures that are aimed at better recognizing, supporting, and assisting our province's caregivers, our unsung heroes, if you will. This plan includes commitments to improve access to resources, reduce caregiver isolation, provide more support services for those who are balancing those responsibilities with work and family life. And here to talk a little bit more about that plan is Tonyu Nguyen, Administrative Director of the Quebec Observatory on Caregiving. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
I'm very, very excited about this topic because I've worked with a client who works in caregiving to do a podcast, and she went on to now work in caregiving with businesses, which is really cool. She's helping them create plans, action plans for their staff, because honestly, from everything I've learned from her, this is going to become a crisis. We've got an aging population. We've got the sandwich generation raising their own kids, taking care of their parents, and they all have full-time jobs. So flexibility is going to be key here.
Absolutely. And, to all your listeners out there, look around you, and the latest data shows that it's 1 in 4 Quebecers. So
Wow.
That's over 2 million citizens in Quebec that are caregivers. And this is data that just came out from the Institut de la Statistique du Québec, hot off the press, came out last week, data from 2024 to 2025.
Wow. So, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. When we say caregiver, what does that mean actually? Because I know there's a lot of people who don't really know what that term means.
So in 2020, Quebec passed a landmark legislation called the Act to Recognize and Support Caregivers. And that provided a broader, more inclusive definition of caregivers. And that is a person who provides support and care for a person close to them. It can be family, it can be a friend. And that support can be anything from self-care support, transportation, managing appointments. It can be psychosocial support. And that gives us a broader definition of caregiving.
And there are different kinds of caregivers, right? Because there's sometimes an acute caregiving phase. If you have a parent who's diagnosed with a terminal illness, maybe you're going to be their caregiver for 6 months. Maybe you take a leave of absence for 6 months and take care of your parent. But if you have a disabled child, this is going to be a lifelong commitment. So it's very different. You can't just quit your job indefinitely. So there are different kinds of supports that are needed for different kinds of caregivers.
Absolutely. Caregiving is not a single profile. There's many faces to caregiving. So you mentioned the parent of a child with special needs. You mentioned, and sometimes that parent of a child with special needs has an aging parent themselves. So you mentioned the sandwich generation. But there's also the youth caregiver. And that's those that are under the age of 30. And the latest statistics say that there's 13% of that, of caregivers that are youth. So 1 in 8 are, you can have a teenager. By day, she's in school, she's doing her homework, she's texting with friends, playing sports. She comes home and she's got to support mom who may have challenges with health. And she's preparing dinner for her younger brother. All that time, she's also planning for the future like any other teenager.
I went to the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence. They had a conference a few years ago that I was lucky enough to attend, and I got to speak with people from the Young Caregivers Association, and they said our data may not even be accurate because very often these teenagers are reticent to disclose that they are caregivers at home for fear of maybe being taken away. Maybe they've got a sick parent they're helping to take care of. They're worried about youth protection stepping in and pulling them from their homes. So oftentimes this data isn't even accurate. Like, I have friends who are caring for their parents. They don't call themselves caregivers because that's not a term they feel they identify with. So the situation is probably worse than we even know, isn't it?
Well, actually, the latest data shows that only less than 50% of caregivers, people who meet that broadened definition of caregiver, actually identify as a caregiver. Wow. And so the challenge in that is that if you don't realize that you're a caregiver, you won't seek help as a caregiver. So that's one of the objectives of the plan, are measures put in place to raise awareness so that people can seek help.
Yeah, let's talk a bit more about that action plan from the Quebec government, action plan for caregivers. I have been long a proponent that we should have very similar to mat leave, where you can take a full year off paid, that is covered, that you don't have to worry about it because it's the last thing you need to worry about. What kind of support programs are available to caregivers right now?
So maybe I can go back. The first thing is that among those caregivers, nearly 60% are working.
Yeah.
And so imagine that you're out there driving, you're doing your daily commute to your day job. You're also worried about fighting a clinic to get an appointment for your loved one. You're worried that mom is going to fall while you're at work. So this is your sort of your second job.
Yep.
And what you're mentioning here is part of the action plan. One of the axes is conciliatory environment. So whether that be the workplace or even the schools, the education system. We mentioned earlier that 13% are under the age of 30. So you have CJAD students, university, even high school students. So how do these environments support caregivers? And you mentioned workplace protection. Some of our caregivers have to forego promotion, have to cut back their work hours, and that's workplace protection. You mentioned normalizing caregiving the way that we normalized parental leaves.
Yep. We got a great text actually from Robert who says, I've been my mom's caregiver for the last 5 years. Every morning and every night, I go and check on her at her house. I bring her supper every night. I try to tend to her needs. She's 88 and I'm 58. I'm a pilot, but I haven't been able to travel for 5 years because my mom wants to age at home. I get no financial help from the government. The CLSC in our area has been amazing to tend to her medical needs, but I am burnt out and have no choice but to keep going. And that's the problem. These caregivers are exhausted and burnt out, and they feel like there's nowhere for them to turn. So maybe part of this action plan for caregivers should be respite. This is something that so many caregivers are in need of.
So actually, that's another axis of the plan, and that's support services.
Yep. And
in the support services, there's actually targets there's psychosocial support. The target that's mentioned is reaching 218,000 caregivers and provide them with psychosocial support. You mentioned respite. There's also a target in that plan for 15 million additional hours of respite between now and 2031. So there's concrete actions that the government is committing to support caregivers.
What other concrete actions are there that we haven't already touched on that people should be aware of?
So there's, we mentioned earlier about self-identification. So recognition that you're a caregiver. Where the stats actually is under 50%. So 46 or 47% of caregivers recognize that they are caregivers. And there's a lot of awareness raising measures to bump that up to 52%. So an attainable target. So raising awareness, providing services. We mentioned conciliatory environments, and also providing reliable information. And that's one of the things that the observatory does best. So providing tools, reliable information. We have a répertoire de connaissances that people can consult. You don't have to worry about fake news and vetting. It's all curated information that's also made accessible. So it can be scientific information that's made accessible so that people not only can identify, but also understand their situation. Because caregiving is really a journey. There's transitions, there's turning points, and there's points of vulnerability. And really identifying those time points will help people seek support when needed.
Tonu Nguyen, Administrative Director of the Quebec Observatory on Caregiving. Thank you so much for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Keep doing the work that you're doing. It's a very important topic. Coming up after the news, electric cargo bikes. Could this be a solution for getting families to stop relying on their cars so much? We'll find out after the news.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you. The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
The Elias Macco Show. On demand.
On demand. Don't miss a thing.
Find your favorite clips at CJAD800.com and on the free iHeartRadio app.
We keep being told to use our cars less, take public transit, but when you've got maybe multiple children, car seats, groceries, diaper bags, it's not a whole lot of incentive there to hop on the metro or to take a bus, but maybe electric cargo bikes could be a little bit more enticing to families. We're going to speak with somebody about this coming up next.
Listen wherever, whenever, on your radio, online at CJAD800.com. On your smart speaker.
Playing CJAD.
Or your phone. Through the iHeartRadio app. Where and when you need us. This is News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
Stories impacting Montrealers.
News impacting Montreal. The Elias Macco Show.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Bonnie, screen time's over now.
Okay. I want to talk to you, device.
Please, call me Lily.
Me and the toys have been working all summer to try and get Bonnie to make friends.
Yeah.
But then you had to ruin
Got it.
You're not even listening to me.
I'm always listening. See?
Now look here. Me and the toys have been working all summer.
Now in Spanish.
What?
Yeah, I got dibs on behind the dresser.
That is some of the trailer for Toy Story 5. It came out in theaters on Friday and, it made a splash at the box office. The fifth installment of the Pixar series debuted in the U.S. with $160 million in domestic ticket sales, $152 million abroad, bringing in $312 million U.S. Ding, 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 cha-ching, in its opening weekend, which far surpassed Toy Story 4, which came out in 2019. That brought in $120 million. So huge sales for Toy Story 5. Maybe a little bit of the Taylor Swift effect, not going to lie. As soon as anything is touched by Taylor Swift, the Swifties come in hordes. She, of course, wrote and sang the credit song. It was the first time anyone other than Randy Newman wrote a song for the Toy Story franchise. She did have his blessing. Don't freak out. A beautiful song. I Knew It, I Knew You. It is going platinum on my Google Home device in my house right now as we listen to it quite a bit. And I did take my daughter to go see it this weekend. I was a little nervous because she's only 4, so we've never done a full-length animated feature film in theaters before. I took her to see the Peppa Pig movie last year, but it was like 45 minutes, so she was able to handle that. So I was a little concerned. It's an hour and 42 minutes for Toy Story 5. We're going to do our best, and she lasted the whole movie. I was shocked. She really loved it, had so much fun, and she asked me to buy her a Woody and Buzz doll when we got home. So she really liked it. And what was interesting to me, so I remember going to see the first Toy Story movie when it came out in 1995. I was 8 years old. And I remember coming home and feeling this need to go play with my toys because I didn't want them to be sad. You know, toys that I hadn't played with in a while that were sitting at the bottom of my toy box. I was like, oh no, I got to dig them out. I don't want them to be sad. That was my takeaway when I saw the movie. And when my daughter and I got home, I asked her, oh, do you want to watch something on TV? She said, no, mommy, I'm going to play with my toys so they don't get sad. So I thought it was so funny that 31 years later, she had the exact same takeaway from seeing her first Toy Story movie. So I thought that was really sweet. But it does hold their interest. So if you're a little concerned about your little one with a short attention span, this one will do it. And the movie theater was packed. All I keep hearing, I feel like I see this all the time. People aren't going to the movies anymore. Every time I go to the movies, the movie theater is absolutely insane. There were so many parents and kids at this movie theater this weekend to see the new Toy Story. My daughter was so excited. We got her a little popcorn, a little slush puppy, and she had so much fun. And do stay I stuck around because I wanted to hear the Taylor Swift song, of course, with the credits. But unbeknownst to me, there is actually an after the credits scene, like a Marvel movie. There's another scene after the movie, which is great because there was a plot hole. At one point, I was like, but wait, what's their mission? They never addressed it. And then they address it in the post-credit scene. So I thought that was really, really neat. And I've already been seeing word that there is going to be a 6th installment in the Toy Story franchise. The reason being that they say Andy, who is the main character in the first 3 movies, he got his trilogy. He got 3 movies to tell his story. Toy Story 4 and 5 are about Bonnie, and they feel she deserves a full trilogy as well. So we need a 3rd movie to sort of wrap up her story. And I'm a big user of Threads. It's the meta version of Twitter. So that's where I went afterwards to see what people were saying about the movie. Now, in Toy Story 5, the quote-unquote bad guy is a lily pad, which is basically a tablet that the main character, Bonnie, is gifted by her parents. She's like 8 or 9 years old in the movie, and she gets this tablet and becomes a bit of a zombie to it. And Bonnie has trouble making friends. I'm not going to give any spoilers. You don't have to turn off the radio, by the way. And so they get her this tablet to help her make new friends. And everybody's takeaway from this movie was, tablets are terrible. We need to reduce screen time for our children. Throw them in the trash. And honestly, that wasn't my takeaway at all. I mean, obviously we need to monitor screen time. There's a lot of data out there about the harm that screen time does to our children. But I think the takeaway is more so about being critical about what our children are doing on their tablets, teaching them how to use them safely. And I think this was actually a movie that really sharply criticize cyberbullying, because that's the issue, is the person on the other side of the tablet that you're talking to who ends up becoming kind of mean and nasty and maybe isn't a very good friend. So I don't know that banning screen time altogether is the solution here, but maybe don't give your children unfettered access to YouTube and Roblox. That's probably not a great idea, but teaching them how to use their devices critically, I think it can be a part of your parenting strategy. I think it's a little unreasonable to expect that 2 working parents are going to never give their child any screen time. Not just talking about tablets. TV is considered screen time as well. We had TV when I was a kid, and my parents just controlled how much of it we were allowed to watch. If we'd been watching for an hour and it was a nice day, they'd make us turn off the TV and go outside. If it was raining, different story, a little more screen time. You know, sometimes giving my daughter an iPad is the only way I'm going to get dinner on the table. So you can't always be a winner here. You got to figure out what you're going to do. So I do think it can be part of your parenting strategy. Does my daughter have access to YouTube without supervision 24 hours a day at 4 years old? No, of course not. I really like Oxford University has a great app for kids that's super educational. And my daughter loves that app. So that's a good one that she's allowed to use. There's a Bluey app that she really, really likes. So stuff like that is what gets us through air travel. It gets us through me cooking dinner. Most of the nights she does help me make dinner, but sometimes she gets bored and doesn't want to keep going. So I don't think there's anything wrong with her using the Oxford educational app for 20 minutes while I make dinner. I think that's fine. I don't think that it has to be the devil, but I don't know. Did you see the Toy Story 5 movie? Did you walk away thinking that iPads were the devil? Because that's what some people were saying. I do think kids need to get out more. I have a lot of friends who have older kids who are like 10, 11 years old, and they just like don't hang out with their friends. They have friends at school and they socialize with them at school during recess and lunch and in class and stuff, but they're not hanging out at each other's houses on the weekend. They're not getting on their bike and riding down to their friend's house to see if they can go out and play, which is what we did when we were kids, right? Maybe I give a call to my friend, you want to play, and ride my bike over to her house, and we would ride our bikes around and, you know, get up to some nonsense and have fun together. But people just don't hang out. These kids are just not having play dates on the weekends. They've got so many activities now, first of all, which keeps them super busy. They're in soccer and dance and softball and hockey and Girl Guides, and there's so many activities they don't really have time to hang out with their friends. And the other thing I think is a big part of this, I was talking about this with my brother-in-law yesterday, is that we don't know other kids' parents anymore. So if you move into a neighborhood that you didn't grow up in, you don't know anybody, you're going to be a little more nervous about sending your kids to somebody's house if you don't know their parents. It's different. I live in Chateauguay and I grew up in Chateauguay. So I always say my daughter, she's kind of screwed because when she starts to grow up and becomes a teenager, I know everyone in Chateauguay, you know, between the people I went to school with or my siblings went to school with. My dad was a school commissioner for like 20 years. I'm a small business owner in Chateauguay. Everybody is going to know who she is. She is not going to be able to do anything without me knowing about it. She's not going to be able to get into any trouble because everybody's going to be ratting her out. So it'll be a bit easier for me because when she asks to go to a friend's house, there's a pretty good chance that I graduated with that person's mom or they went to school with my sister. So it's a little bit easier for us to make play dates. And I really hope that we'll be able to, that she'll have friends and they'll want to hang out on the weekends, because I do think that's an important part of socialization. I think apps are great. I think tablets are great. I think that this is an important, technological advancement, and I think it can be part of a healthy parenting strategy. But I would like to see kids hanging out a little bit more in person. I used to listen to the radio when I was a kid. I would record the radio to my tape deck, and then I would record over the announcers in between the songs so I could practice announcing the songs. Shocking, I went on to work in radio, but I was obsessed. And I would do that stuff with my friends. We would record our own little radio shows, the original podcasts before the iPods came out. I think it's an important formative part of growing up. You got to learn the choreography to a Backstreet Boys dance and do it in the living room for your parents after you spent 2 hours with your friend learning how to do it. It's a part of growing up, and it is necessary. And you can't do that if you're always using Roblox.
We had very different experiences growing up, you and me, Rob.
You didn't learn the Backstreet Boys I Wanted That Way choreography, James?
I did not. I can officially say that I did not do that. Nor did I learn any of the choreography to Spice Girls or any of the other, or NSYNC or any of the other bands at the time.
But I bet you weren't stuck on a screen. You were probably outside playing with your friends. You were doing sports. You were hanging out with your buddies. You weren't stuck staring at a tablet all day.
Oh, I was doing what regular kids did back in my day. I was breaking windows with baseballs.
Forming relationships in the ravine, stealing bicycles, TPing houses. Come on, kids, grow up, get arrested.
I will not admit to any of that.
Coming up after the news, how much should movers cost? As someone who just moved recently, it's a lot more than you might think. We're going to speak with one of the owners of Meldrum the Movers coming up after James's update.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all. Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.
You're listening to the voice of Montreal.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
An iHeartRadio station.
Canadian women are looking for more of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.